What's up? What's happening on a Tuesday? Back in studio after a great day yesterday at the Green Turtle. Appreciate everyone who came out, said what's up. Good to meet some new friends, some new fans, and that hopefully are listening right now or watching right now. We had someone who subscribed to YouTube right there at the table. So that was pretty cool. Of course, you can watch the show all 3 hours at the Team 980. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday, and we get to vibe check you on the Commanders as they start their off-season workout plans. It is phase one, which typically is without the coaches. This is the part of the offseason that is typically for most teams a organized team workout. Chad Englehart, the strength coach, would typically lead it, all of that. But because the Commanders have a new staff, and specifically a new head coach, they are allowed to actually do on-field work. So we don't get to see any of it. It's all behind closed doors. The reporters will get a chance to talk to a number of players, including Terry McLaurin and John Allen, via Zoom tomorrow. So we will get a bit of a sense of how things are going, the early stages of the install. But there is actual football being quasi-practiced in Ashburn as of today, Anthony. So we will get the social media post of the pictures. We'll see who's in those pictures. Did everybody show up? Those controversies. They're so much fun each and every spring. But, Anthony, I think what we're going to do today for Vibe Check Tuesday at 301-230-0980 is simply ask folks, what are your expectations for the 2024 season? The Commanders have we're up to 24. They signed another backup linebacker today. But the depth just continues to grow. We know they still have a big hole at left tackle. We know they still have a quarterback that they're going to draft in the first round, overwhelmingly likely at number 2. So there's all of those things that we still know. But I do think we are deep enough in this now that we've seen it. And, of course, the timing that we will start to see them on the field very soon, that we can say, what do we think this team will be in 2024? So 301-230-0980 is the phone number for you to chime in on that over the next hour. Anthony, I will let you, however, start. You get first crack at 2024 expectations.
Wow, what an honor. I'm not going to lie. My expectations aren't too high because, again, I understand we are a couple of years away. But I just feel as though, our fan base, everybody want to see, some type of winning when it comes to, the football team in general. So I'm expecting, or I'm hoping we can go out there, play, and go maybe 7-10, 6-11, somewhere around there, just because I feel as though we have a lot of work to go. Again, we had to overhaul the entire roster. I mean, that seems to what's been done the last couple of weeks. And now we got to, gel. We got potentially a rookie quarterback coming in, new staff, new everything, to be honest. So I just think this year should just be all about, setting the foundation. So we're out there getting 6-7 wins. I think that's a step in the right direction. And then we build on it from there in the next couple of seasons.
I think there's kind of two sets of expectations. I think there's the process expectations, and I think there's the results expectations. And I guess we're kind of looking for folks to chime in on both. I think the process expectations are you compete week in and week out. I think the process expectation is that you ultimately are able to line up every week and, not get blown out, be competitive through large stretches of games. And the things that are going to ultimately undermine you are the fact that you don't have the talent. And especially at the quarterback position, you will be looking at a rookie who is learning on the job and probably is going to make a few critical errors at times. And hopefully we'll all be responsible enough not to freak out about it and ultimately be able to, handle it with some kind of care, some kind of actual responsibility in terms of the commentary, and just say hey, don't make the same mistake twice. Certainly don't make it 3 times. But we understand that you're a rookie and there's only so much you can do when you get got by an NFL defensive coordinator and a bunch of NFL veterans, which you will undoubtedly have on your schedule. But you also just don't have the playmaking that at times you're going to need a guy to step up and do something spectacular, and that those players aren't necessarily on this roster right now. Now, I certainly think that we could be in for some surprises. You have like Deron Bland all of a sudden emerge out of nowhere. It feels like last year for Dallas because this defensive coaching staff and a lot of the pieces that came over from Dallas know how to generate turnovers. So hopefully you get that. You have your Chins and your Luvus and some of these impact type of players on the defensive side of the ball that you're hoping can step up and help you be competitive, help get some of those higher variance plays, the turnovers, things like that. And then offensively, like, we'll see. But I also think what's going to be interesting to see is like how conservative or aggressive are they from the game plan standpoint, because I kind of feel like they should be hyper aggressive defensively and then pretty conservative offensively. And that formula could keep you around 500. And it's going to take some luck. It's going to take some bounces. But we talk about the process. That to me is the process. The results are somewhere between a 6 and 9 win team. And, if lo and behold, you get the number 2 pick that turns into CJ Stroud 2.0 and you've got quarterback play, well, now we can party. Now you're talking about a 9-10 win team potentially in the way that Houston was last year. Wasn't exactly the strongest division. I think it's going to be an interesting year in the NFC East. I could see it going any number of ways. But I'm not anticipating for the second straight year the number 2 overall pick having the best rookie season in the history of the NFL. That just seems unlikely. So I think, Anthony, I'm much more in the exactly where you are, 6, 7, maybe if some things go really well, 8 wins, and a good feeling about the future. That to me is, I think, where my hope is, and not even my hope, my realism is for 2024.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly when you split it up based on like process and results. Process-wise, definitely I agree. Defensively, we got a defensive-minded head coach. We've invested so much on the defensive side of the ball, and let's see if he can get the most out of those defensive players. And we have those guys under contract for the next couple of years, so why not lean on that and let that be our leading force, and then not to just put so much on the rookie quarterback. So I think you're absolutely right when you talk about Dan Quinn and the defensive staff inserting themselves and just trying to make the most of what we already have invested in that unit.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, I think as long as they establish the play style and are competitive week in, week out, which kind of go hand in hand, I'm good with whatever happens in 2024. If they are a pain in the butt to play every week, and especially if it gets harder to play them as the year goes, then I'm good in 2024. I have no misgivings about the talent on this roster, where there are holes, where there are questions, and especially the limits of subpar quarterback play. I think I've seen enough of it at this point that I should know better, and certainly think that we learned that lesson in terms of consistency. But also we'll see what the game plan is week in and week out, because last year we never could have guessed that the game plan would be as subpar as it was. But we'll see what that is in 2024. What are your expectations? 301-230-0980. Got a couple calls already lined up, but plenty of phone lines open. What are your expectations for 2024 for the Commanders as they open their offseason workouts? Taking your calls for the hour here on a Vibe Check Tuesday. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday, so we're starting this hour with the Commanders, but we will, of course, talk about the games last night, Iowa, LSU, UConn, USC. Do that starting at the top of the hour with a writer who was there, so always on the scene with Not My Beat coming up at 5 o'clock. Right now, though, 301-230-0980. That is the Team 980 listener line, and we get things started with our question of the day. What are your expectations for the Commanders in 2024 on the day that they're starting their off-season workouts? And let's get things going with Nate in PG. Nate, what's up? You're on the Hoffman Show.
Man, nice to be the first one to get the ball rolling. And I want to say, look, I'm a Packers fan, but I'm born and raised in DMV, and I listen to you guys all the time. And I think it's a little hard to be so objective when you're immersed in it week to week. But I actually believe that if you look back over the last couple of years, this team has had opportunities to make late playoff pushes and, you know, be in situations that really, I guess, showcases a bit. They don't have as much talent deficiency as I think you might think and other members might think of the fan base. And I actually feel like, you know, if you've got the right staff, I think coaching is really, really, really important. The older I get, the more I realize how important coaching is. And I don't think they had the proper staff last couple of years to get the most out of the talent that they had acquired. And if you look at what they did in the offseason, brought in a lot of veterans that can establish a culture. And they brought in some guys who have won in their past, you know, previous stops. And they brought in some young talent that I feel like can have an opportunity to shine in a new place. So all you really need is the quarterback. And, you know, you're one good draft away from being able to turn around. Look at the Texans. I'm drawing a blank on other teams here, but
that's the problem, though, Nate, is like outside of the Texans, it's really hard to do it with a rookie quarterback in year one.
The Bengals had a turnaround from overnight when they brought in Burrow.
Burrow's really 2 years, though. Like Burrow's rookie year, they were not nearly as good in part because he got hurt.
He missed a lot of the first year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, but I mean, it's still like it's not like they were killing it that rookie year. Also, Burrow's kind of like one of the most unique prospects in the last bunch of years because he was so NFL ready coming out, and the chances of finding that again feel very slim.
But I push back because when you look at it the last couple of years, I really believe that there have been guys that came into the league and been able to show promise early on. I
promise is different than winning immediately, though. Like that's the whole point here.
Well, I mean, I think they have the ability to turn it around. If you have the right coaching staff, I think the offense has an opportunity. They have pieces on this offense. I just don't think that talent is – I don't think they're as bereft of talent as it's been portrayed over the past couple of years and especially months as the excitement has ramped up for the new regime. That's all I'm saying.
Nate, and I don't disagree with you. I appreciate the call, man. And I don't disagree with you. In fact, I'm one of the people that I think has loudly said I think this talent is better than we thought. And it really comes down to how poorly it was used and how heinously it was mismanaged within the context of football. Like, it's just, they did a bad job, but they also obviously built a roster that a lot of the rest of the league thought was not very good. At the very least, Adam Peters and Dan Quinn didn't think was very good because they jettisoned half of it in their first off season. They brought in a lot of other really solid players, but they're lacking two things that get you over the hump. They're lacking stars and they're lacking quarterback play. And again, if they can get a number 2 pick to come in, like, I agree, they could be the Texans 2.0. But the chances of getting the best rookie quarterback season in the history of the league 2 years in a row feels crazy. And that's what C.J. Stroud had last year. He was a borderline, if not bona fide, MVP candidate as a rookie. You don't see that. Like, Cam threw for 4,000 yards back in the day. Andrew Luck was good every single year he was in the league. Just health was an issue there. But like even Peyton Manning, like awful rookie season. Set the record for interceptions. Burrow was pretty solid his rookie year. 65% completion, 13 touchdowns, 5 picks, played in 10 games, but they were 2-7-1 in his 10 starts that year. Next year they were 10-6 and he helped them get to the Super Bowl. But the idea that even Burrow, who was 24 years old, NFL ready as they come, number 1 overall pick, consensus by a mile, even he struggled as a rookie. And so it's not that I really vehemently disagree with anything Nate said from like the analysis standpoint. It's just that saying, well, they're a quarterback away is like saying you're a tire away from being able to drive down the road. Like that's a pretty important piece of the vehicle that we're missing here, or an engine away from driving down the road. Like, okay, cool, we got a bunch of tires, but we need something to move them forward. Let's go to the Junkyard Dog, JYD, calling in with us on the Hoffman Show. JYD, what are your expectations for the 2024 Commanders?
Well, I don't put too much hope in this coming year, and in fact, I don't put too much hope in the next 2.5 years, simply because when you look at what they did this season, as far as the roster, they got a lot of people that are on 1-year deals. That tells me that these people more likely won't be here the next year. And when I hear so many people calling in talking about, well, we got 9 picks or whatever, this 9 picks is not a lot of picks when you're trying to fill out a 53-man roster. And plus, you have to count on at least maybe 1 or 2 of those people might not make it. So maybe you're talking maybe about 6 players infusion that you might have. So I don't see. I say it's going to take at least 2.5 years to really say that you're ready for anything. And then you got the quarterback. Look, people keep, like the guy that you was just talking to. Mediocrity quarterback play does not cut it in the NFL. It does not get you anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it can get you like to 500 if you insulate it properly and you don't make those quarterbacks do a whole lot. But you're 100% right.
So you 8. So you win 8 games or 7 games or whatever.
Right.
Whatever. But I mean, but is that really what you want?
Not long term, but like, who cares about? I don't want to say who cares, but like in 2024, it is what it is. You can't get a star quarterback without letting them bake. Like you can't turn the temperature up to 800 degrees on a recipe that says 400 and cook it in half the time. Like that's not how player development works.
I've listened to you all the time, Hoffman, on your show, and you seem to be the type guy that also doesn't just look at today. I think you look ahead as far as what you might want to do with your show and this and that and whatever. Sure. So you have to also. I look at it to say, okay, teams that are trying to build themselves, not just the Commanders, but now you talking about maybe next year, if there is a quarterback. Let's say, for instance, they trade back and let's say they wait to get a quarterback. Who's to say next year when you got prime time coming in, maybe his son is whatever, maybe he's the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick, and he says nope, don't want to go to Washington.
Well, yeah, I mean, like there's always the what ifs. I still think I'm not even saying like trade back. I'm saying you take a guy this year, he's just not going to be good this year. That doesn't mean he's not good next year or he's not good in 2 years.
Okay, what's this thing? Another big question I got for you. What's this thing about Daniel's elbow?
Oh, he's just got bursitis. It's a sack of fluid. It's fine. It's nothing. It's a funky picture that looks really weird, but he's not a cyborg. He's fine.
But is it going to have to be drained constantly or whatever?
I don't know enough about his medical information to answer that question.
Okay, and whatever. So like I say, to me, it sounds like it'd be better for them maybe to drop back some, get the guy a Penix, or like I say, I don't know why people don't like Bo Nix. They say, okay, he checks down too much, or he throws the bubble screens. Hey, don't forget now, there's a lot of bubble screens are thrown in the NFL, even though I don't particularly like the plays.
Well, there's not as much as he threw at Oregon. All right, Jay Whitty, I appreciate the call. We're going to keep it moving. We got other folks chiming in. 301-230-0980. A couple of things. Bo Nix, I actually don't mind Bo Nix. It's not the guy that I'm not going to be like, yeah, we got our guy, Bo Nix. But if you want to build a young Kirk Cousins-y, super insulated offense around a guy like Bo Nix, could you do it and, win 8 games? Yeah, I think the problem with a guy like Bo Nix is you're always going to be in that, hey, we got a guy, but we don't have the guy, and we're going to need to upgrade. I doubt that Nix is going to develop into something where you feel confident saying we have a top 10 quarterback in the league. And that is the difference between him and Penix versus the other 4. I think there's a chance that all 4 of the other guys, especially Williams, obviously, but May, Daniels, McCarthy, all have upside to be top 10 quarterbacks, and then you're set at the position versus we have a guy, but maybe we could do better, which is a terrible position to be in. You get stuck in limbo, and that leaves you questioning are we going to get hot and have a Joe Flacco, an Eli Manning, or is it going to be Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott where we're pretty sure these guys are pretty good, but we don't have the playoff wins to show for it. So that's thing one. Thing two, going back to the very beginning of the Junkyard Dogs call. 9 picks is a lot, and it's not just they have 9 random picks. They don't have 4 picks in the top, 60 and then 5 in the last 200. They don't have a bunch of 6th and 7th rounders. They have 6 picks in the top 100. That is 6 potential starters. That is a huge percentage of your roster in one draft class. And certainly if they have a lot of draft capital moving forward as well. They have a full deck and the chance to acquire more. So with all of that said, if you can get over the next couple of years, let's say 12 to 15 starters on that are draft guys, you get 6, 7 this year, and not necessarily starting immediately, but over the next 5, 3 to 4 years, you get 6, 7 this year, and again, let's say 6, 7 next year. That's 12 to 14 guys. That would be incredible over 2 draft classes. But they're giving themselves the chance because they have high picks, and they're trying to acquire more. You do that. Plus, yes, they have a lot of one-year deal guys right now, but you could re-sign some of these guys. Also, they have some of these guys that are key starters. Some of them will be a lot like Biotish and Dorrance Armstrong and oh God, I'm now blanking. Biotish, Armstrong,
Leland,
Luvu, Chin, Cleveland Ferrell. Those guys will be around, and you still have guys that you like from previous draft classes. You could still have Quan Martin and Emmanuel Forbes for a long time. Hopefully, there's a couple of other guys that wind up panning out despite how bad they looked early on. Chris Rodriguez should be around for a while. Then you do have a couple of studs. Sam Cosmi's a really good right guard. Sam Cosmi's a centerpiece for this team, a building block piece for this team. So the cupboard's not completely barren. You don't have to remake all of it, and they are giving themselves the chance. So I also just, the thing that I don't want to say it irks me, but the thing I question about stuff like that is, what's your plan that's better? What are you actually looking to do? And this goes back to the Josh Harris quote. If you want to get to 8-8 real fast, I could GM a team that was 8-8 this year. It's not that hard. You want to build a sustainable winner over time? That's why you hire someone like Adam Peters. Someone who understands the long-term vision of how to put together the pieces, how the math works on the salary cap, has that long-term vision, that skill set to build a sustainable winner that is not just an 8-8 team, but is a 10 to 12 win team year over year that legitimately gives you a chance to win a championship. That's what you're looking for. That is the long-term goal. But for now, the question is, as the Commanders start their offseason workouts today, 301-230-0980 is where you answer it. What are your expectations for 2024? 301-230-0980. More of your calls next. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. What are your expectations for the Commanders in 2024? That's what we're asking on a Vibe Check Tuesday this hour here on the Team 980. Don't forget, if you miss any part of the show, so say you're listening right now and you're like, man, I'm excited to talk about this, but I really was hoping to hear Craig's take on the Iowa LSU game. We're going to talk about that in the 5 o'clock hour, but we podcast everything. So after we get done talking about it, you'll be able to go to the Hoffman Show podcast feed and check that out. The one, the only, Anthony Haney works on that very diligently. We would appreciate it if you listened. And really also, it's just, we're doing this for you. We put it on demand so that you don't have to glue yourself to your car seat every single day for 3 hours. You can still enjoy the show while having the rest of your life not in tatters. Okay, let's get to the phones. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. 301-230-0980 is where you call with your expectations for the Commanders for 2024. Let's go to Little. Little, thanks for calling. You are back on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah, Hall, thank you for taking my call, man. Shout out to your man Anthony. Hey, that old Rick, a.k.a. Rick Junkyard Dog, he got a shiny toy up there in Kansas City. Hey, look, Hall, I'm telling you now, I got us, man. Depth is one word I want to say. Yep, and be hungry, man. We got a staff that's hungry, from the coach, from the head coach to the defensive coordinator to the offensive coordinator. They all had a little piece of the action, but they never got to the promised land. We're gonna compete for the division. I'm telling you that now. And I see this man, like you say, Peters, going in this draft. And look, the coach from LSU already told you who the quarterback gonna be. He let it slip, man. He's going after Daniels. He's going after that kid, man. That kid gonna be.
Hold on, Little. Well, I'll let you keep going in a second. But we're not believing Brian Kelly on this show. We do not believe that Brian Kelly knows anything because he's Brian Kelly. Like, come on. The same dude who just faked it, created a country accent when he went to LSU, the same dude that's like left savagely multiple programs. We do not trust Brian Kelly on this radio show.
And one thing I can say about Brian Kelly at the showdown, he was sober. So I'm gonna let that be. Hey, look. All
right, what you got? What you got for 2024? What do you think they're gonna do this year? You clearly like it. How bold are you willing to be here?
I'm bold. I'm a season ticket holder. I'm bold. I got us compete for the division. Hey, man, I like it. From that middle linebacker we brought in, man, look, guess what's going to happen, Hawk? They're going to follow the leader. Everybody going to follow the leader. So that's what I'm going with, man. I got us compete for the division.
Okay.
Hey, God bless y'all. Stay.
All right, appreciate you, Little. Look, I'm not going to poo-poo optimism here. There are no bonus points for pessimism. There are no bonus points for optimism. We're just all saying realistically where we're at. It is April 2nd. There is no reason to be like, sit down. You and your optimism, get out of here. We're not doing that on this show. Do I think that is bold? Yes. It is. Is it my prediction? No. I do agree with a lot of the point. Like, I agree with a lot of what Little said. I just don't come to the same conclusion with that information, right? I do think that there's a hunger on both sides of the ball. I do think Cliff and Joe Witt bring something to their respective rooms in terms of that, like, hey, I got something to prove here. Joe Witt, because he feels like he's been passed over. Cliff, because he's looked at as a failure. And he's like, no, just like, watch what I do when I'm an OC. I'm going to remind y'all how good I am at this. And even if the head coaching thing's been more of a mixed bag. Obviously, DQ, second time around, he's got something to prove. There is a hunger to a lot of elements of this organization in a way that there hasn't been in the past. But more importantly, there's a competence to every area of this organization that there hasn't been in the past. Where I hit a snag, the hole that I think is bigger than I guess Little does is the skill level across the board, right? They have some really nice, hungry players. The depth is fantastic. They lack top-end talent. Quarterback play is a question. That leads me to think they're going to be falling behind Philadelphia, behind Dallas, and then we'll see what New York is. I mean, I just don't categorically have faith in the Giants because every time I feel like that they could be good, I'm out here just Charlie Browning it up.
This time I'm going to kick that football clear to the moon.
Idiot. Thought the Giants could be good last year. I think Dable's a good coach, but I don't believe in them. So yeah, we'll see. But that's the most optimistic call we got so far. Let's go to Daniel in Richmond, see what he's got. Daniel, what is your what are your expectations for the Commanders in 2024?
Hey, Craig. Appreciate you taking my call.
You got it.
Look, I'm tired of the whole optimism thing. Like, okay, so I know you just stated that, you're not going to hate on optimism or hate on pessimism, but I'm kind of thinking there's like kind of a confusion with optimism and delusion to a sense, because I will admit I was very delusional last year, seeing that one game of Sam Howell would in turn fix our QB situation and ultimately at least have a 7 to 10 win season. Boy, was I wrong. So now I am just going to hold my tongue when it comes to being so optimistic. Now, in terms of quarterback, I like the three guys. I like all of them. I mean, they all have their pros and cons. Whichever one they pick, I want one of them to start and see what happens. And I want to see a competitive play on the field that's consistent and that there is some sort of mesh and continuity within the coaches and players. Because obviously last year there was a big disconnect, a huge disconnect with Ron. People respected Ron, but I don't know what it was. It just was not clicking last year, especially last year. The do your job thing, that drove me crazy.
Daniel, I'm not gonna lie. You sound like my inner monologue, because from the Howell thing, not necessarily I thought Howell was gonna solve all the problems, but like I was like, I don't know. I think this kid can play a little bit, and with Bieniemy coming in, like he'll be smart in how he uses them. 7 to 10 wins, like they could do this, and what you just said as well about all that, like. All these are things that I agree with you because I said them all right here on this radio show. And so I think you and I are in the same place where it's like, the results end of it, like, we'll see. But from a process standpoint, like, just be competitive and I'll row your boats in the same direction. And that'll be such an improvement that I'll feel good about it.
Correct. Do you know how many quarterbacks have started for this team since 2000?
472,563. Not quite that many. Do you have the actual number?
No. 27.
27, yeah.
Since 2000.
Anytime you're competing in a bad statistic with the Browns, you're in bad shape.
Like, that's ridiculous. So,
yeah.
I just want to see a competitive game. The competitive games throughout. I believe in what Peters and Josh Harris are doing and all that. Like, I'm just trying to be positive in that way. Like, I know it's going to take process. Like, everybody that goes back to the Houston thing, that was once in a generation. Like, everybody needs to calm down. I know there was whole thing, like, just because it happened before, it can happen again. But
for sure. No, I agree with you. The chances are just so slim. Daniel, great call. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling in. This is, of course, Vibe Check Tuesday on the Hoffman Show. And you, like Daniel and JYD and everyone else that's called in before, can call optimism little, with his optimism. Daniel with his realism. All calls welcome. 301-230-0980. We got one more segment of them. 301-230-0980. And then we hit the college basketball from last night starting at the top of the hour. joins. He was in Albany last night watching the Caitlin Clark show. We will get his thoughts on that. Plus, a question I have for Ben, as someone who covers the sport, is how close. Like, if I'm a scout, forget their legacies, forget the career achievement list, and we'll talk about Caitlin Clark's place in basketball history coming up at 5:30. But as a scout, how close are Clark and Beckers? Because I actually think it's like, I'm a huge Caitlin Clark fan, and like fan of her game, and think she's going to be very, very good in the W and the whole deal. But I actually don't think it's that wide of a gap between Clark and Beckers. Am I off on that? I want to run it by someone who's watched more of them than I have, even though I've watched quite a bit of both at this point. So we'll talk to Ben Pickman about that and more coming up at the top of the hour. Right now, though, back to the phones, 301-230-0980. What are your expectations for the Commanders in 2024? Let's start off with RC and Indian Head. RC, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah, Craig, thanks for taking my call. I'm going to say that I think that Dallas, Washington, and the Giants, not the Giants, Philadelphia is going to be close in performance and games, because both of the other teams are rebuilding, and Dallas is in the fit, and Philadelphia is in the fit, so they're rebuilding as well as Washington. Now, I will say this, even though you asked that question, what's your prediction for 2024? Washington could have won more games last year than they did, because they wanted to have more picks in the draft. Now, when they bought
they just sucked down the stretch. Like, they were a bad football team. They did not lose intention. Now, I'm not entertaining this. We got too many other calls. That is a silly premise. I am not doing that. That was a bad football team that was coached like crap. And that was I've covered this team since 2015. I've covered a lot of bad football. That is the worst stretch of football that I've seen in that entire time. They had like fourth string quarterbacks some of the Gruden years, and it was not as bad as some of the football that they played in the back half of last year. We're not doing that. That doesn't mean that that some of these players aren't better, but it wasn't like they tanked. Not the case. Let's go to JT. JT, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, Greg?
What's up, bro?
I'm good, man. But my prediction is if we get Jaden Daniels, I'm saying that we'll be 8-1, and then if we select May or McCarthy, because I think they'll be more of a project and not ready to play, so we'll see Mariota for too much of what we really want to see of him, and I think we'll end up going like 6-11 if Mariota plays a lot until the rookie gets in.
JT, I think it's a great call. It's an interesting concept, because I don't disagree that their best option for next year of all the options on the board might be Jaden Daniels, or might not be Jaden Daniels. He is the most ready of the three. I don't know that he's the best guy long-term, which is obviously a discussion that we've had ad nauseum and will continue to have as we continue to break things down over the next month leading into the draft. But for next year, I think you can build an offense that uses some of Jaden Daniels' strengths that match up well with some of the strengths already on this football team. And I do think he's the most pro-ready guy. So I think that's an interesting take that I like. Let's go to Billy, who I think has an equal but opposite take, if you will. Billy's down in Miami. Billy, what are your expectations for the Commanders for 2024?
Hey, Craig. Thank you for taking my call. My expectations are a +8 game win year, even being conservative in a year we are creating foundation for the future. I am optimistic. Now, I mentioned that the main reason I'm calling, though, is because I was incredibly excited last week about the pro days of Caleb, Jaden, and Drake May. I watched them all in full live and in prime time, and was frustrated that the monumental sports news seemed to take over all of the news last week, and we never had an opportunity to talk about this. So I'm late to the party, but I do want to tell you that I work in finance and hedge funds for a living. I read people, and I saw that Drake May pro day. Dan Quinn was giddy. And there is no question in my mind right now that they were going to be taking Drake May, which makes me happy. And I kind of agree with the other caller that, it depends on who we take depending on our success, because Drake might be a work in progress. but I'd love to do a gentleman's bet with you. I'll even give you odds that we will be taking Drake May. I mean, they almost like they wanted to jump in the huddle. They were so excited.
Billy,
Billy,
I'm too smart for this. I also have seen the betting markets shift. You can't get me on odds because right now Drake May is the odds-on favorite. So that was a nice try. But no, the betting markets have been, I think, behind a lot of the analysts here being like, no, they're still going to go Jaden Daniels, for whatever reason. Vegas knows things. They don't air condition the desert because they lose out there. But literally today, I think all the markets shifted, or in the last 24 hours, all the betting markets shifted, and Drake May is now the favorite at number 2, according to Vegas.
Did you see Dan Quinn? Did you see his face?
But they also had moments with, people point to the Adam Peters moment with Jaden Daniels dapping him up before they get started. Like, the rumors out of Michigan were that they had a great meeting with J.J. McCarthy. So I think it's too much to read body language. I think you can like multiple guys. Ultimately, it's going to come down to one, and I think that's the fun of it. But I hear you. I think some of this, Drake's last 10 minutes of that pro day was insane. He also did all the other stuff that drives you nuts. I mean, it was kind of the thing, is like these pro days have shown you all the things that if you watch the tape, you're like, yep, nope, confirmation, saw it in person. So it's been an interesting process for sure. Billy, as always, thanks for the call, man. We got a bunch of other calls on the line, so I'm gonna have to let you go. And I want to try to get to Shaq and AJ before the time is out. Apologies to Billy. Let's go to Shaq. Shaq, thanks for calling. What are your expectations for 2024?
What's up, Hoff? Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
My expectations, I think we can win about 9 to 10 games, and here's the reason why. Number one, I think Jaden Daniels is the pick. He's going to bring so much electricity and excitement. Our defense is going to be better. We got better minds on defense. And I think that we're not going to be passing the ball 60 times a game, and it's not going to be all on his shoulders the way it was when Sam Howell. And I think if we get the city and the crowd and everything behind our team, I think that that's going to help us out a lot. I think we could have a season similar to the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I think that there is a version of events where it could go down like that. I just think that's unlikely. Like, as a ceiling, I hear you. I think in terms of like where I would make my prediction, it's a lot closer to the 6.5 number that Vegas put out. But I don't think it's totally unreasonable if they play it the way that you said in terms of a game plan. It looks a little RG3-esque actually in terms of 2012 and the way they built that offense and really leaned on Alfred Morris and some of the weapons that they had. Shaq, thanks for the call. Last but not least, let's go to AJ in District Heights as we're up against the clock here. AJ, finish us off here. Your expectations for 2024 for the Commanders.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I think my expectation is just to be patient. Only three quarterbacks on their rookie deal, because I know this trend for rookie deals and winning on your rookie deals is a thing in the NFL, but it's only happened 3 times. Really, Pat Mahomes, who won it in his 3rd year, I think Russell Wilson won it in his 2nd year, and Joe Burrow, who went to the Super Bowl in his 2nd year. So it's not like a thing where these rookies are going to automatically come in and win. So I just think everybody just needs to be patient. I am excited. I think we had a playoff team last year, but I'm glad we didn't make the playoffs because we got the coaching staff, the GM, and now we got the number 2 pick that we want. So I think we're a good team. I think we could make a playoff push last year, but I'm all about Super Bowls. And so I think it's going to be a couple of years for that.
Yeah, no, AJ, appreciate the call. Thank you. And I'd add Brock Purdy is on his rookie contract, obviously made the Super Bowl last year. But look at the rest of that roster. Look how much high-end talent. This is my thing. Like, Brock Purdy, one, is way better than we ever thought. So we need to stop talking about him like Mr. Irrelevant. Like, Brock Purdy is probably a top 10, borderline top 10 NFL quarterback. I know it doesn't look the same as some of the other guys, but, like, all he does is deliver the ball on time, on target. Excellent work out of him. But he's able to do that to really, really exceptional players, and that, to me, is the path. Like, can you find other guys in this draft where picks, not just pick 2 is really important, but picks 36, 40, 67, 70, on down the list are starters, and you even get 1 or 2 stars out of that turn into the Fred Warners and the Tafungas and some of the other guys that they have out in San Francisco, the Deebo Samuels, the Brandon Ayuks, that make the Niners a model for what you want to build in the same way that Detroit has found Amon-Ra St. Brown and others later in the draft. You have to get 1, if not 2 or 3 of those, not to mention you do yourself a huge disservice if you do not hit on quarterback at number 2. All right, great hour of calls. We will obviously have more coverage of the Commanders' offseason program and adjust our expectations accordingly over the next couple of weeks and months. The schedule came out today. Commanders open things up in Ashburn with a workout this morning, and we will hear from Terry McLaurin and others tomorrow via a press conference with the media. That is hour one. Hour two is going to focus on the hoops from last night. You definitely don't want to miss Ben Pickman joining us after his night in Albany watching the Caitlin Clark Show next here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And at 5 o'clock, time to talk about today's top story.
Today's top story, from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in. Not my beat.
And today, the top story, games last night that decided the final four spots on the in the women's NCAA basketball tournament. Just tremendous games, the star power out of control, and they all showed up. And joining us to talk about it is Ben Pickman of The Athletic. Ben, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely. So last night, obviously the billing, the names that are highlighted are Clark and Reese in the first game, and we'll start there. Both of them just show up in tremendous fashion. Clark drops over 40. Angel has 17 points and 20 boards before fouling out. But how much of that game, in your eyes, turns on Reese turning her ankle versus the other things that Iowa was able to do to stem the LSU attack and have a much better defensive second half than they did at first?
Reese afterward wouldn't make an excuse for the ankle injury. It had been something that had been nagging her since the SEC tournament that she talked about a little bit afterwards, but she wouldn't make that excuse. The thing I would say is that in the third quarter, Iowa really pushed the pace. They ran up and down the floor. On multiple occasions, we saw, Iowa score without Reese getting past half court. That was something they had done in the first quarter as well, so I would expected them to continue to run, to get easy layups, but I do think it hampered her. We didn't see her be as explosive. We didn't see her jumping ability. That's one of her strengths on the boards. We didn't see that in the second half as much, and she went 1 of 10 from the field. Was a little bit more limited on the offensive end, as you mentioned, until she fouled out with just 2 minutes to go in regulation.
Yeah, and I do think it was a cumulative effect. It's something we talked about on the show yesterday as we were previewing it, that if I know LSU is one of the best paced teams, and actually I think in the regular season played at a faster pace technically than Iowa, but it felt like going into the game, and I'd be curious from your vantage point, both your own opinions and in talking to folks around these games, was that Iowa's plan was to try to literally run LSU off the floor because LSU's advantages felt like they were more significant on the size portion of it? If that became like a bruising, slowed down game, it favored LSU versus the open floor wheeling and dealing that Iowa is so potent with.
I think it was, and I think the game as a whole was always going to come down to the other players. It wasn't going to come down to Reese and Clark and Anissa Morrow. It was going to come down to the role players, and that was something that Kim Mulkey had really talked about in the lead-up, that Clark is going to get hers, and that's something that is consistent with a lot of the reporting I've heard and talking to head coaches throughout the year, that there's just this expectation that Clark is going to score 25, 30, 35 points, and you really have to clamp down on those others. And they didn't really do a very good job of that, LSU, on Monday night, right? We saw Sydney Folter get 16 points, rather. We saw Kate Martin get 21. Hannah Stolke got 8, even though she dealt with foul trouble. Even Addie O'Grady, a reserve center, played really, really well in her 15 minutes off the bench. It was Iowa's reserves, those other players, the other starters, that were really key in that victory, because they really helped both produce on both ends of the floor, and LSU's inability to kind of limit them on the offensive end, and Iowa's ability on defense to play 2-3 zone and have that do just enough to disrupt Reese, to disrupt Anissa Morrow, to force Flau'jae Johnson, Haley Van Lith, Michaela Williams to settle for jumpers. That all did just enough on the defensive end to make up for the pace advantage and to make up for the contributions that Iowa's reserves and their role players had on the offensive end.
Ben Pickman from The Athletic is with us here on the Hoffman Show. And we've seen that kind of strategic decision. Pick any great player who's a great scorer and a great passer, LeBron, Steph Curry. You've seen it in all the way back in the history of basketball, men's and women's, where you kind of just pick your poison. And like you said, a lot of coaches for Clark have picked we're going to let her score, try to limit her assists. But seeing how it was going last night, did you feel like Kim Mulkey erred in not trying to get the ball out of her hands earlier than what they tried 2 minutes to go in the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly fair to question how Mulkey decided to guard Caitlin Clark. We saw a lot of times where those guards, in particular Haley Van Lith, were going under ball screens at the top of the key, at the three-point arc. And we know that Clark likes to pull up from pretty much everywhere from when she gets across half court. So that was a little bit of a surprise. I think the biggest surprise for me in terms of a lineup decision was Kim Mulkey and LSU only playing last tier Poa, their reserve guard, only 15 minutes. She did have 3 fouls, but she was pretty effective in guarding Caitlin Clark in the 2023 National Championship game. She actually drew 2 charges in that game that were really some of these calls that swung the tide in the second half. Now, she is a player who brings them energy. Statistically, she's one of their best reserves, or in part of their best lineups, rather. So the decision to not have Poa guard Clark a little bit more was one of the surprises, as was the decision to not have Flau'jae Johnson guard Clark a little bit more, because we certainly saw Caitlin Clark had her way with Haley Van Lith, and, Caitlin Clark has her way with a lot of players, and so it's not an embarrassment or a slight on any players, but it was a little bit of a surprise to see how Mulkey stuck to Van Lith as much as she did and didn't turn in particular to Poa, in my opinion.
Are you going to get, the investigative team at The Athletic to see what Haley Van Lith did to Kim Mulkey to draw that assignment? Because that just felt nuts. It's one thing to single cover. Obviously, I think schematically, it was funny watching all the WNBA players be like, what scheme is this? Why are you going under ball screens? But to leave Van Lith, who is giving up height, quickness, speed, and by the way, was on an IV after their Sweet 16 game. So she's not 100%, not remotely close. To leave her on there, that felt like, come on, Ben, you guys have such a great investigative team at The Athletic. We gotta get someone on that to see what Van Lith did here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, and maybe I'll float that idea to my colleagues. I mean, Mulkey did say, and she gave Van Lith a lot of credit leading into the game for how she's been able to contribute, especially on the defensive end when her shot isn't falling. So, it wasn't a shock to see her at least open on Caitlin Clark or guard her for stretches, but you're right, it certainly did not work the way LSU might have hoped. Now, what I will say is that there aren't a lot of things that really work with Caitlin Clark, and I've had a line that a coach told me earlier this winter that, when you're defending Caitlin Clark, you need a plan A, and then you come up with a plan B, C, D, and also an emergency plan, because you don't know which of those. Likely none of them are going to work. And frankly, there wasn't a red button that LSU smashed. They probably should have smashed the emergency button and figured out whatever the emergency plan was, because what they drew up on the scout clearly was not effective in limiting Clark and limiting all those other players.
So last Iowa question here would be, how much better is this team than last year? Because they made what was kind of a surprise run to the Final Four last year, and obviously the national championship game going through South Carolina before LSU beats them. They get the revenge this year. It just feels like Kate Martin's a much better basketball player. I feel like Caitlin's a better overall basketball player, as great as she was and has been. Hannah Stolke obviously emerging on the scene. Part of that is just a minutes thing. Part of that is a maturation. A falter you mentioned. How much better is the 2024 Iowa Final Four team than the 2023 Iowa Final Four team?
I mean, it starts with Clark in that she is improved, and when you are as great as her and you take another step or another 2, 3, 4, 5 steps forward the way she is, that obviously has helped them out a lot. I think overall, though, the team is a little bit more athletic. They play at a faster pace than they did last year. Monica Sonano was one of the best bigs in the Big Ten, and she was really efficient scoring around the basket. She didn't really ever dribble and yet was still able to be effective. That was kind of the MO on Sonano. But this year, they don't really have a post threat that they ever need to play through. And so instead, you saw it on Monday night. They just run up and down the floor, 3-on-2 situations, 4-on-3 situations. They just make or miss, push the ball up the floor, hope Clark settles for jumpers. Clark finds Gabby Marshall. Clark finds Cynthia Folter. She finds Kate Martin. Pace is so much more important, and there is just a lot more space on the floor for Clark to operate in. You just see her dart around the floor for looks and to find players on back cuts. I think opening up the space is one of the big parts of their offense and why it has improved this year versus last year.
Yeah, I thought it was a great shout by Rebecca Lobo on the broadcast last night that Caitlin is the best get-ahead passer since Sue Bird. Just the amount of points they steal easily on fast, and they're not exactly easy too. I think you wrote about this actually in The Athletic about how Falter and Kate Martin have had some of these really difficult catches and finishes in transition, and how the pace of Clark's passes and all that. But you see how it can get you 10, 15 points a game. Obviously, and LSU goes down along those lines last night. Ben Pickman of The Athletic with us for a few more minutes here on the Hoffman Show. You and your colleagues at The Athletic did a really interesting project, you, Nicole Auerbach, and others, asking players in the tournament who would they like to have on their team, like if they could pick a player. And not surprisingly, Caitlin Clark was the number one answer. But right behind her was Paige Beckers, and we saw Paige be brilliant again last night, 28 points in UConn's win. And Ben, I guess the question I have for you is, we're not comparing resumes. We're not comparing about the GOAT talk and all that kind of stuff. If I'm a scout and I've got the choice between Clark and Beckers, how tight of a competition is that, just of what they are as players, especially if you want to project them ahead to the next level?
It's a good question. I mean, and I've done some talking to conversations with GMs, and we'll actually have a story running on the site next week about what some GMs think about Paige Beckers and other members of the 2025 WNBA draft class. Really, the MO on Beckers is she can be a star. People think she can be that generational player, but health is the question, right? And that's why the debate or the conversation between Beckers and Clark, if there was a 1-2, if they were both in this draft, wasn't ever really a conversation. Because, look, Paige missed last season with an ACL injury. She played 17 games in the year before. And so she's dealt with major injuries. Yes, she won National Player of the Year as a freshman. She's shown when she's on the court, she can be one of, if not the very best players in the sport, right? You can make the case that she's doing as much for her team as Clark is for Iowa, right? UConn has 5 players who have gone out for the season with season-ending injuries. Paige Beckers is not only playing guard, she's also playing some forward. She handles the ball, she guards big, she does everything for this Huskies team. But as we look to the next level, the question is health and how will her body hold up, and what is her durability like? And that is the question that general managers have. That's not a question they have with Caitlin Clark. And so, it's not really a discussion. It's not really a debate in terms of NBA front office, or WNBA front office circles, rather.
I don't know if you asked this in the course of interviewing folks for the piece, but if I could guarantee you Paige's health for the next 10 years and guarantee you Caitlin's, because they're very, I don't know that people that don't watch on a regular basis really understand this. They're very different players. Paige has this great middle game. As you mentioned, she's playing some forward, she'll be down on the post, she's got a post game, but she can obviously handle the ball, pick and rolls, all that kind of stuff, where Caitlin Clark is somehow a combination of Steph Curry and James Harden, which is absolutely terrifying. And it's worked as well as any player in the history of the sport from a scoring perspective and obviously an assist perspective, but they're very different stylistically. So I'd be curious if you could guarantee the health and you take that off the table for this hypothetical question. Are there GMs, are there scouts, are there WNBA people who would take Paige Beckers over Caitlin Clark?
It's a good question. I would lean to say no, because in conversations with executives that I've had about Clark, the reality of her too is there's a business component here too. And, we often don't like to think about it in professional sports, NBA, NFL, women's basketball, it doesn't matter. But you have to look at ticket sales. You have to look at TV ratings. You look jersey sales. These franchises are businesses. And while Paige Beckers is certainly a ratings driver and is one of the biggest stars in the sport, you can make the case we've never seen a star like Caitlin Clark, or at least in women's basketball, right? The way she's attracting all these crowds, the record TV ratings that follow, the way fans flock to games at home, on the road, they wait in line hours in advance. I did have some WNBA executives talk to me about how, their owner wouldn't trade really anyone for Caitlin Clark or the chance to draft Caitlin Clark because they would sell tickets. And maybe you can say that's an unfortunate reality and you shouldn't be constructing a team that way. But I also think it is the reality of the situation that we're in. And a lot of franchises across sports think about the marketing component. And that is important here in this Clark Beckers discussion too.
Ben Pickman of The Athletic with us. And somehow, Ben, we are 14 minutes into this and we haven't mentioned the team that's undefeated. Is South Carolina, who's had a couple of scares here the last couple of rounds. They haven't exactly blitzed through this tournament in the way that some folks thought. They obviously played LSU tough in the SEC tournament. They've had some close games, which can be looked at negatively or positively. Are they still the overwhelming favorite, the slight favorite? How do you kind of handicap this Final Four?
I think they are the favorite. I think it is a tough matchup. I think they're the clear favorite against NC State. I do think Iowa could give them some problems, and we've seen Iowa give them some problems. The thing that is different about this year's Gamecock group is pretty much everything, right? They have an entirely new starting five. It is a team that's built on freshmen and sophomores and juniors who previously didn't play a lot last year. Camilo Cardozo is a center in the middle, a senior, who's one of the best bigs in the country. They play, very fast, which is a rarity for Dawn Staley teams. It's the fastest team in her era since she got to the Gamecocks. And they lean on the bench. They're the best bench in the country, or the best bench that made the NCAA tournament. They average more than 34 points a game off the bench. So they just have so many options. So when you look at South Carolina, when you look at Iowa, rather, when you look at NC State, when you look at UConn, these are all teams that if there was foul trouble, if Clark got in foul trouble, if Sanaya Rivers of NC State got in foul trouble, if Paige Becker's got in foul trouble, those teams would all have problems. South Carolina, foul trouble, not an issue because they just throw out body after body after body, both in the guards and in the front court, and that is really their advantage. The other thing I would say is that they play very loose. There's a freedom in the locker room and on the court, and it's something that Dawn Staley has kind of come to appreciate and understand about her team. You would think with a team that is undefeated like South Carolina is, there would be a pressure, a weight, because history is staring them in the face. They'd be just the 10th team ever to go undefeated in a season. But being around this team a little bit this past weekend, you don't really feel that. There's just a jovial nature. They joke around a lot. They give each other a lot of crap all the time. It's just a fun environment to be around, and you didn't really feel the pressure at all, or I didn't, and I don't think any of my colleagues being around them knowing that this is the team that is 35 and now 36-0.
Last question is one that I, frankly, as someone who's been someone who covers women's sports for a long time, hate that I have to ask, but it is a part of the storyline of where we are in the history and the trajectory of the sport right now. But since you're in it every day covering this, the Caitlin Clark phenomena, Paige, obviously we see there's tremendous talent coming with Juju Watkins and Kiki Rice at the LA schools. The talent is not going to go anywhere. But since you mentioned kind of Clark's unique place in the sport from a marketing and everything, she's doing State Farm ads, the whole deal. As you're around it, does this feel like a tube of toothpaste that's been opened and is not going back in the tube? Or does this feel like, on some level, a fleeting moment in time? Not that we'll ever go back to the way it fully was, which is phenomenal, that we are past that, but that this is a peak that is not going to sustain, that is in some way Caitlin Clark powered in this very moment.
No, I think the toothpaste is out of the tube. I think we see brands investing in players and in the sport more broadly in a way we haven't before. We see the star power that goes along with it. You mentioned Juju Watkins, you mentioned Paige Beckers. They'll be here next year, and I'm sure they're going to be stars 2-3 down the road who we're not even talking about right now that will become some of the biggest names in the sport. Clark in the WNBA, she's going to be a draw. We've already seen ticket sales go way up. We've already seen it, at home and on the road for Indiana Fever games, where she is likely going to be the number one pick, and at some of these other games around the country. And I don't think there's any reason to think that will stop, right? We need to see more brand investment, more television investment, but there's no real reason to suggest that this is a fleeting phenomenon, right? I think it's fair to wonder if they're going to break records every single game on every single network, the way it feels like is the case this year with Caitlin Clark in college. Do I expect 6 TV networks to set new highs next year? I'm not necessarily thinking that, right? I think that might be a little bit unique to the accelerant that was Caitlin Clark in college basketball. But there's no reason to think that the interest is going to significantly diminish. And I'm thinking of it the other way, that I think it's only going to increase, and we're going to see it both on the college level and also in the WNBA level, partly because of Clark and partly because of all the other stars that are going to be in the league right now and feeding into it over the next few years.
Yeah, I think the fact that we got 2 years of this, like Caitlin last year opening everybody's eyes, and then her somehow not just following up on it, but exceeding the expectations this year, where she just is delivered in every big moment. People are like, oh, wait, this is awesome. This thing that felt like a flash in the pan last year is like, I want to watch this all the time. And then you get to see the Jujus and the Kiki Rices and on down the list. And Paige, obviously, I think is if you don't know about Paige Beckers, you're about to when you watch her face Caitlin Clark coming up later in the week. So, Ben, great stuff that you and all your colleagues at The Athletic are doing, covering it all. I can't wait to read the kind of behind the scenes, talking to W folks as the WNBA draft is just around the corner as well. And appreciate your time here on the radio.
Thanks a lot for having me.
That's Ben Pickman, writer at The Athletic. You can read his work, of course, at theathletic.com. When we get back, Anthony and I are going to dive into kind of this big, grandiose question about Caitlin Clark's place, not only in the current of basketball, and I would say college basketball, women's college basketball, basketball in general, but also her place specifically in women's college basketball history. Is she truly the GOAT, or is she just the most known of some of the best players that has ever played the sport? We'll debate next on The Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Talking hoops with you. We'll take some calls coming up in just a few on last night's games and kind of where we go from here. UConn, Iowa next up. Well, I guess not next up. That's actually the late game. On Friday, NC State, South Carolina will get it started. A little North Carolina, South Cackalack rivalry, Anthony. As a South Carolina native, I'd say it's a big deal.
It is.
I think that'll be fun.
It's
A
gonna be
battle of the Carolinas.
Yeah, which state is really superior?
It depends on in what.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, go ahead. Name your topic.
Let's go cricket.
Neither. Next.
All right, let's go basketball. High school basketball.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's tough. I feel like South Carolina, we've had some.
North Carolina got some dudes.
We've had some dudes. I mean, we got Ja and Zion. They played on the same AAU team.
Yeah, that is it.
Kevin Garnett back in the day. There's been some damn good high school players coming out of South Carolina. North Carolina's a much bigger state.
I'm from D.C., so I'm going with John Wall in North Carolina.
Yeah, he was pretty good. He was pretty good. From that same Raleigh area that NC State's in. Anyway, the point is they get started, and then you got Iowa and UConn at 9 o'clock. And, of course, Caitlin Clark in the brightest of spotlights. I'm going to answer my own question first before we kind of get to the even bigger discussion, Anthony. But I asked Ben Pickman when he was just on with us, do we think this is sustainable, or do we think this, like, is a Caitlin Clark-powered peak that is going to fall back off? And I would say the answer is both. I think that, like, there is a sustainability to women's college basketball right now that is structural, that is sound, and that it is not going anywhere. And, in fact, is going to be continued because Juju Watkins and Kiki Rice, speaking of D.C. high school basketball, Kiki Rice shouts out to the D.C. native, killing it at UCLA. Paige Beckers, we'll see. Angel didn't wind up announcing last night. Like, she had to declare or not, but we didn't hear anything. So we still don't know. Maybe Angel Reese is back next year in college hoops. But there's so much talent and so much star power, and it is easier to develop that star power in the women's game because the age limit of the WNBA is much higher than it is at the NBA, and there's not these alternate routes that the best players in the country are going to. And the international women's game, like, players come here and go to college. Like, the UConn's point guard was born in Croatia. Like, you don't have the 19-year-old academy kid that becomes the first pick in the NBA draft, and then 5 years later you're like, oh, Luka Doncic is really that dude, huh? That's a bad dude. Like, those women go through the American college system mostly before they come over. So I think all of that adds up to a sustainability in the women's college game and a popularity that's going to continue to put up monster TV numbers, and people are going to care about, and people are going to have their favorite teams. I think younger generations, like, there's going to be a lot of young boys, nevertheless young girls, who, like, when you ask them who their favorite player is, they're going to say Caitlin Clark and Juju Watkins and down the list. But I do think this peak is higher than any other peak that we're going to see for a while because Caitlin is that unique of a star. Like, Caitlin is her from not just from a playing standpoint. She's the NCAA's all-time leader in, like, every scoring category at this point. She's breaking somehow, like, 3 records a night. Like, whatever one she hasn't hit, she's hitting them game by game. Division I records, women's records, all division records, this 3-point record, that scoring record. And, oh, by the way, she led the nation in assists this year. Like, she's just an unbelievably unique and skillful and talented player who also happens to be killing it from the marketing side, signing perfect deals, being used very well by advertisers. Like, there is just a lot going for Caitlin Clark that makes me think that whatever number this game puts up on Friday on ESPN and whatever number, we're still waiting on the number from last night, it's going to be way over 10 million watch. Like, those games are going to be the record for a while. But that doesn't mean that you're going to go and have 500,000 people watching or 1 million people or even 2 million. It's just going to dip down to 8 million. It's just that Caitlin Clark is bringing in a level of casual fans that we see in all sports all the time with transcendent superstars. So that would be my answer to that question of whether or not this is a sustainable long-term thing at this level or a peak. it's both.
Yeah, and I would agree. Caitlin Clark definitely has done a lot for the women's game, but I think her and Juju sort of kind of sharing the stage, it could sort of be seen as a passing of the torch where Juju is now the one that's, bringing in a lot more casuals and growing the game in that manner. Again, she's only a freshman, so she has at least, 2 to 3 years left to, continue to grow the game and, really put her name out there. We're already seeing her in commercials. We're already seeing, her be marketed in a special way. So I think Juju could be the one that also catapults, or piggybacks off what Kaylin has already, started.
I think that's definitely true. The one thing this is not any reflection of Juju. The one thing I worry about is she's on the West Coast. And so, when it comes to watching her games night in and night out, it's one thing. I mean, how many people were watching Iowa games at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night? There were certainly some, and there's going to be a lot more watching at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night on the Big Ten Network in January than there will be watching at 10 o'clock Pacific time or 10 o'clock Eastern time on a Wednesday night on whatever network that the USC is going to, maybe they'll be on the Big Ten Network now too. God, that's weird. Anyway, the West Coast thing always has an impact on this from a visibility standpoint. But on the weekends, the game's at 4 instead of 1 o'clock. And I will say, maybe that actually winds up working out. Maybe I'm actually wrong on this because, obviously USC's home games are going to be played late, 7 o'clock local time, 10 o'clock Eastern. If they're in the Big Ten, they actually will play a decent amount of games on time zones or in a time window that's more conducive to higher viewing. That's just math and geography. That's not any reflection of Juju and her star power. That's literally the only reservation I have about her because her game, her charisma, her everything, she's got it. Juju is also her. Yeah. In terms of the ability. And, we're going to play some sound later and real things about how much her teammates trust her and the maturity that she's got. I think that's one thing that Caitlin has that has so benefited her. She doesn't miss when she's in front of a mic. And I think Juju's got that same thing, too, that is going to help propel her star to a super high level. The records are going to be fun to watch, too. Obviously, Juju just set the freshman scoring record, so she is on pace eventually to catch Caitlin if she can do the things that Caitlin did in years 2, 3, and 4. So that who knows? Maybe Caitlin Clark's going to smash all these records and they won't last very long. But where does she stand in terms of the all-time greats? I think is a really difficult question, and this is an unsexy answer, but it's the answer I always give on this, which is she's the GOAT of this generation. It's really hard to compare generationally. And I think she's such a unique case because there's a really good chance if South Carolina finishes this thing off that she goes through her 4 years without a national championship. And she'd still be the GOAT of this generation. She's that good and has been that impactful as a player, nevertheless, all the off-the-court stuff. But it just shows you how hard it is. And, she's playing at Iowa with all due respect to what Lisa Bluder's built there, a very, very good program before Caitlin was there. They've never had success like this. And I think it's hard to measure that versus Breanna Stewart, Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, who took UConn, a program that expects to win championships, and did the thing that they're expected to do. They couldn't overachieve. Stewie kind of did. You're not supposed to be able to win 4 in a row, and Stewie did. But I just feel like it's hard to compare someone who's doing kind of what Steph did at Davidson, taking a program that's solid and has a lot of good pieces and taking it to the absolute highest end of the sport to the blue blood of blue bloods and keeping it there over even an extended period of time, or in Stewie's case, her entire career.
But I think that's also where the debate goes because, again, you look at Sabrina Ionescu, who took a lesser-known school in Oregon and, did what she did. Or you look at Kelsey Plum and the numbers that she was able to pull up, the run that she was able to go on her senior year. Which of those is, more impressive, though? The fact that Caitlin Clark is also following in their footsteps and being able to take this, lesser-known school in Iowa and, match it up against what South Carolina has built, what UConn has already established the last, 40, 50 years, however long Gino's been doing this.
It hasn't been that long. It's been since the 90s.
Maybe 25, 30.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I don't know, like, which one is, like, more impressive?
I mean, I think in that category, Caitlin's the queen of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, her career is better than Sabrina. It's better than Kelsey, and that's not a shot at those two. They were number 1 overall picks, and deservedly so, and, have had moderately to very successful, we'll see what Sabrina can continue to grow into, W careers. But, like, Caitlin's better than KP was at Washington, and she's better than Sabrina was at Oregon. So, like, in the non-UConn, non-Tennessee category, because then you add in Candace Parker and some of the other great players that have played there, Shamiqua Holdsqua, like, you go down the list, and there's great players. I mean, back in the day, USC, powerhouse, had a bunch of great players, Cheryl Miller, Lisa Leslie, on down the list. Like, obviously, you go back before it was D1, and they're playing whatever the old version was, and, like, I've told the story before. I coached at Nancy Lieberman's basketball camp back a decade ago, and Nancy Lieberman's out there at 50 years old running around with a bunch of 20-somethings, and she was still the best player on the floor. She wiped our, what's all over the place. I've never played with a player who had vision like that, and I cannot imagine when she was in her teens and 20s, like, how good she was as a college basketball player at the peak of her athleticism, at the peak of her powers. And God forbid she had the resources that are available in the modern game. So, like, it's just impossible to compare, like, Nancy's era to a decade later and Cheryl Miller, who put up just preposterous numbers, Lisa Leslie, Rebecca Lobo, Dawn Staley, like, on down the list. I think when you look at modern players and you look at that group that's non-powerhouse, who are the players that have elevated a program, I think Caitlin's the best one of the group. How that compares to Maya Moore, how that compares to Stewie, how that compares to DT and Sue Bird, I think it's a lot harder comparison. Obviously, Candace Parker, same thing at Tennessee. But I'd say Caitlin she's in the mix, which is all you can ever ask to be. There's never, ever going to be definitive GOATs in any sport. Outside of, like, Jerry Rice is the best receiver of all time. His numbers are so far better than everyone else, it's not even close. Wayne Gretzky is the best hockey player of all time. Those two live on, like, different stratospheres than everyone else statistically, and it is just impossible to say that anyone has reached their levels of dominance at their specific tasks. Outside of that, I think all you can ask is to be in the conversation, and Caitlin is definitively in that conversation.
I think a championship will stamp her, but look, that remains to be seen. I think she needs. I think she needs one really bad because everybody else at the top of the list, multiple time champion.
Dog, if she can do it though, like, I think that does. There are people that will make the argument that puts her ahead of her one will be more.
That would be a crazy run.
Well, especially if she drops like 40 and 40 in the next 2 games and has this all 40, 15, and 10. Final against to knock off South Carolina and end an unbeaten season. Like, it would certainly go down as the greatest single season of all time.
Greatest single season, greatest run, because again, knocking off this South Carolina team, and her team was the last team to beat them. So,
right,
I think it would be a full circle moment kind of thing.
And God, they're like a couple questionable charge calls last year in that title game away from going back to back. Like, that's crazy. We'll take a couple calls on this next. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Coming up tomorrow on the show, Linnell will be firing off takes during this time. Going to look forward to having him on Wednesdays for the rest of the offseason. We will never read the comments probably till Thursdays. So just doing some reorganizing. It's our spring cleaning, Anthony.
Yes, gotta adjust.
Yeah,
because again, we hadn't had Linnell on a Tuesday in a long time.
Overreaction Tuesday works during the season when we're in the rhythm of football.
Yeah.
There's no particular reason it has to be on a Tuesday once we get outside of football season. So it works better with his schedule. We can have our guy in studio, and Wednesdays. If he can recover himself after the 3 hours he does at the Russell, it's nice to have him. And typically he gets some of the nonsense out of his system, or sometimes it gets injected in his system during that show, and then he comes on with us. It's always funny to hear the different Linnell on the Russell Show versus the Hoffman Show.
Yes.
I think we should just get back to the calls. 301-230-0980 is the phone number for you to chime in on any part of our Caitlin Clark and women's NCAA tournament discussion. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Cliff in DC. Cliff, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's going on, Craig?
What's up, Cliff?
I didn't know you were saying great players at USC. I thought you were saying former players at USC of our women's basketball, because I was telling Anthony that you forgot to mention the two girls out of Southeast Washington, Pam and Paula McGee, which Pam is JaVale McGee's mother.
Yeah,
and what made me call in was because I was looking at the situation of Tennessee firing Kelly Harper yesterday, and I put out a text on Facebook yesterday saying that Deidre Charles should be the next head coach, but when I Googled it today, I found out she passed away back in 2018 without me knowing. So I had to send another text out making the correction from yesterday's text.
Well, yeah, that's obviously not going to work out. I don't know what else to say there, Cliff, but thanks for the call.
All right.
Ant? You have something to say for yourself?
No.
Do you have something to say for yourself when we go to commercial break?
Maybe.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So early predictions. NC State, South Carolina, Iowa, UConn. South Carolina gets it done?
I think they get it done, but I'm going to be rooting for some reason, though. I want to see NC State go out there and win. I want to see somebody upset Don Staley and crew. I just think South Carolina's so talented. I don't think there's really a team that can really play with them when they're playing at their best. And I think NC State, they're going to need one of those special performances from Isaiah James or who's the other guard?
She's going to have to hit 5-6 threes.
Yeah. But they have another guard, number 22, the Dreads. She's really good.
I'm blanking on her name, too.
Yeah. But I'm rooting for them. I don't think South Carolina's going to bow down. I think they're going to go out there and get the job done.
Yeah, no, I think South Carolina, it's been so – look, this NC State team has had just the most remarkable run. They haven't lost since they lost to Virginia Tech and they lost by 1 to Virginia Tech. When was this game? Just rolling through their schedule real quick. January 7th. They've just been on fire. And so they are right there. And, maybe they should have even been seated higher. They had a couple of losses, obviously, but they came into the season unranked, and they've just found a way to keep going. And, actually, sorry, scrolling the wrong way on the schedule. They have had some losses, including North Carolina and Duke at the end of the season. They lost to Tech twice, so sorry, rolling the wrong way. But they started the season hot. And then, obviously rolled through the NCAA tournament here, largely thanks to the brilliance of Isaiah James. And then who else? I'm trying to remember. Rivers, I think, is the other.
Yes, Sanaya Rivers.
Sanaya Rivers was the other name that we were both searching for there. But I think South Carolina is just going to have too much. And we'll obviously talk about these games more This is a Friday-Sunday bit, so we will talk about them probably pretty heavy on Friday. But I think we talked about LSU probably is going to struggle with Iowa's pace. I do wonder if the depth at UConn finally catches up with them when they've been in this tournament. They've played all the way through the Big East tournament. Paige is awesome. Aaliyah Edwards is awesome. They've got other players who are fantastic. It's UConn. They're loaded, but they're so depleted from a depth standpoint, and these players have played so many minutes. Can they literally keep up with Iowa? And that's to me is the big question. Or can Gino get creative? Because I do think that he will junk up the defense against Caitlin Clark. She is not going to get one-on-ones, especially against, all due respect to Haley Van Lith, a Haley Van Lith level defender. Paige is probably going to guard Caitlin Clark. I don't think that will reverse on the other end, but I think that's probably going to happen. And then it's on, Paige. Can you be you offensively while guarding Caitlin Clark for even if it's 25 minutes? That's a tough ask. Yeah. And I don't know how Gino's going to play that. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame and he's him.
I mean, we saw 3 UConn players on Juju yesterday, so I don't think they plan on making it easy for Caitlin Clark on Friday. But at the same token, I just feel as though Caitlin Clark and their depth, their speed, their pace is going to be too much. And actually, Coach Bluter, she was on the Pat McAfee show earlier today, and she was talking about how their speed, how they just want to break down teams because a lot of people aren't used to playing at that pace. And they play at that pace every game. So it's an advantage Iowa when you get into a track meet with them. So hopefully, UConn try to slow it down a little bit. But they also like to get out in transition.
No doubt. And it's, LSU found this out the hard way last night to an extent, right? It's you can play with them for a quarter, play with them for a half. Yeah. But when it starts to feel chaotic for you, they are in their comfort zone. And that is exactly what Iowa did last night. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We can take a few more calls on this next here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. By the way, Ant, we are almost at 2,000 subscribers on the Team 980's YouTube page. So, if you're not subscribed yet, what is it that you are waiting for? We stream the show live every single day, all 3 hours or 2 hours and 45 minutes as it be this week. So make sure that you check us out there. You're driving home, all that. You get home, and you could turn on a national sports show, or you could just keep listening to the show that you want to listen to anyway. And there'll be me and one box and Anthony in the other box, and we'll be like, hi, hello, we're talking sports. So as you pull into your driveway or your apartment building or wherever it is that you park your car, go home, fire up your smart TV. Or, of course, you can say, hey, Alexa, play the Team 980, and you can listen to the show that way as well, courtesy of the Odyssey app, which is now Alexa enabled. Very cool. All right, Anthony, you found an interesting little clip on the old interwebs from NFL Live today on a couple of my favorite analysts and their thoughts on where the Commanders should go at the quarterback position with a very long-term view of things. Mina Kimes, Dan Orlovsky, take it away on NFL Live.
I don't think the question is which quarterback fits with Cliff Kingsbury, who's their offensive coordinator. I think the question you need to be asking is, how is Cliff Kingsbury going to adapt his offense to suit a rookie quarterback? Because from what we saw in Arizona from 2019 through 2022, there were a lot of flaws. I'll just point to one thing. During that period, Dan, Cliff Kingsbury's offense ranked dead last in the NFL in use of motion. If you aren't using motion in today's NFL to give your quarterback information, to create, we talk about all the time, I know, to create leverage and spacing, I feel like you're lacking in assisting, and it's an oversimplification. There's a lot of factors in that, but I don't think the Washington Commanders should be drafting thinking about who best suits what we've seen from Cliff in the past.
Okay, totally agree on that point. If we're being honest, the quarterback that best suits what Cliff wants to do is Caleb Williams, just because of the point guard element, catch and throw, and also the ability to run. I do not think that the best, at least plug and play person is Jaden Daniels. Jaden comes from a place that they did use a ton of shifting. They did use a ton of motion at LSU. The other quarterback that I think makes a ton of sense, and it's probably not at 2, is the guy that you just talked about, Bo Nix. Bo Nix is really a point guard. That's really what he developed to become in Oregon. So I know that's not where they're going to get slotted, but to Mina's point, if it's about Cliff and Washington, those are the 2 best players that you want to take and just plug and play into that offense.
So that is a pretty fascinating like thought process that injects a new angle into this months-long discussion of who is the best fit for the Commanders at number 2, Anthony. And I think it is, and we just heard like a minute and a half here, and I would love to have this conversation with Dan and or Mina on a much longer, radio or podcast length discussion. Open invitation, guys and gals, to come on the show. But I think Cliff's offense will evolve. And I was talking about this with Mark Bullock the other day, where he went back and watched, obviously, a lot of Cliff in Arizona, as Mark, former Washington Post and Athletic writer who dives into the X's and O's and has been on the show and has been on the podcast and does our YouTube live streams and the whole deal. And Mark, he said, towards the end of Cliff's time in Arizona, he saw some shifting elements in Cliff's offense. Shifting as in like the offense was changing, not as in motions and shifts. And they started to add some more West Coast style solutions to certain problems. And they started to change up how they ran some things that were maybe better fits with NFL or their own personnel in Arizona than the way Cliff had done things previously in the air raid and in college, et cetera, et cetera. And so the offense grew and evolved year over year in Arizona. And it's why I think a lot of people are high on Cliff and what he can potentially do here in D.C. with the additions of Anthony Lynn, with the additions of Brian Johnson, which I think it's part of the reason why projecting who Washington is going to take at number 2, it's part of the reason why that is so freaking difficult is there are elements to all of these guys that I really like that I think fit well. By the way, like I don't hate the Knicks shout from Orlovsky. I would much prefer taking one of the top 4 guys. Obviously, Caleb is the best guy because he's the best guy. But like Drake can do some of the catch and throw stuff. He's got some of the physical tools that I think would be really good in this offense. He's done some of the RPO stuff. He's familiar with a lot of the concepts. And obviously the upside arm talent is great. He also is a guy that can scramble at a really, really high level, and he throws well on the run, where Jaden Daniels doesn't really throw a lot on the run, but has the big deep ball arm or deep ball accuracy. Like his numbers on shots 20-plus yards down the field are preposterous, Ant. And then he's obviously got the running ability that you can do some design quarterback run stuff if you want to. And then J.J. McCarthy, again, his mental processing's really high. He's got a good arm. He throws it well over the middle. He's throwing a bunch of tight windows. He can throw really well on the run. Like, there's a lot to like there as well. And so, when you look at what Cliff did in Arizona, I think what we're going to find out pretty quick here is how much of that was him adapting to what Kyler Murray wanted, and how much of that does he change because Kyler Murray is no longer his quarterback, to involve whether it's shifts in motions, whether it's to involve more or less West Coast elements, or Air Coryell elements, or air raid elements, gap scheme, zone, running stuff, marrying play action and pass concepts. Like, there's so much runway here for him that is both exciting and terrifying, because it could either take off or it could just be a whole big mushy offense that never actually gets off the ground.
And this is why I also just like the Cliff Kingsbury hire in general, just because of the experience that he's had, not only as a play caller, but also as a head coach, and the fact that he's young. So I think he understands that you can't just stick to the status quo. You got to be able to, evolve with the game, like, over periods of time. So you can incorporate what you learned in the past, but also keep up with the present. And I think he has, like, just full autonomy to, like, do whatever. And, hopefully he can figure out, how best to, organize his offense to best suit whoever we end up drafting. So a lot to, work with, I guess, like, based on, like, whoever we end up taking.
Totally. And I do think that's a great point by Mina. Like, he's got to make sure that he gives this young quarterback solutions. And that has kind of been what he's known for, is like making quarterbacks' lives easier. But hasn't used one of the main tools that a lot of modern NFL offenses use, which is the motions and the shifts and all that kind of stuff, to kind of break down some of the disguises and shells that defenses use to make things difficult, especially on young quarterbacks, but on all quarterbacks in the league. And so, with Brian Johnson, with Anthony Lynn, how much stuff do they? Lynn has done some of that certainly in his time. Johnson, they do some of that stuff in Philadelphia. But there also are elements of just like, hey, let's line up and play. And there are quarterbacks who like that. So I think it's also incumbent on the quarterback to be able to handle that stuff and be able to adapt as a defense moves and shifts with your own motions and shifts, and see through whatever disguise they're trying to play, and ultimately make sure that their eyes are going the right place so that they can deliver the football on time and on target. So there's a lot there. Like, playing quarterback is hard, but it's the OC's job to make it easier. And Cliff adapting to whatever level of complexity that the young quarterback can handle, and then hopefully evolving it to be more complex and handle more stuff to make their jobs easier over time is the job. If they do that well, they'll be successful. If they won't, Cliff will get fired, everyone else will get fired, and the young quarterback will be yet another person on a list of failed Washington quarterbacks over the last all the years. We get back here on the Hoffman Show. Wizards Bucks tonight. We head out to the arena. Dave Johnson joins us from the booth. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Of course, we are your home for Washington Wizards basketball. Wizards in action tonight, which means it's time for us to welcome in with, of course, a proper introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the one and only Dave Johnson.
Time to get the radio party started.
Blocked by Bilal Coulibaly. Oh, boy, did he stuff him. Left wing pool, it's there. Oh, that's a pool party. Near the basket, slam right there. Oh, they're stealing the slam. You better go off. Intercepted by Kispert. Kispert now, foul line. Oh, slam. Ooh, that'll dry your preserves.
It's time for Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day.
Kuzma for three. Oh, it's there. It's there. Big shot.
On the Hoffman Show.
Dave with us from the broadcast booth at Capital One Arena. Dave, hello, sir.
Hello, and we have playoff basketball in our town, just not at this arena, at the Entertainment and Sports Arena in Congress Heights, about to start in 13 minutes. The Capital City Go-Go in a playoff game against the Long Island Knights. I bring that up because we have several players that we could probably use on the Wizards tonight, but we wish the Capital City Go-Go well, because this G League development is a real thing now in the NBA, and we're seeing it certainly with the Wizards, but with other teams as well, where teams are in close proximity and in many cases practicing in the same facility. So you really see the benefits, and I've seen it firsthand, whereas years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there was a CBA affiliate or in some faraway place, and a player really wouldn't have much familiarity with the team he was being called up to, and that's not the case now. And that's why we've seen so many great storylines from the G League, most notably Jared Butler played, and he will be with the Wizards tonight. But for example, Justin Champagnie, Patrick Baldwin, they are down with the Capital City Go-Go, and again they're going to start a playoff game at 6:30 tonight if you're in the neighborhood.
There you go. Baldwin looking to bounce back after a rough shooting night with the Wizards the other night. Hopefully, the Go-Go can be the benefit of the law of averages tonight.
That's
and
right.
Get themselves.
He's due because he can make them. You're right.
Yeah, it was 0 of 8 the other night. Not an ideal night, but hey, that happens. It's the league. There's a lot of games, and it's tough to hit shots in the NBA. That is for sure. Since you mentioned it, Dave, have you seen a difference in the way the Wizards as an organization have used the Go-Go this year with Michael Winger as the new president of Monumental Basketball?
That's a good question. I don't know if I could, I hadn't thought about that, if they've used it differently. I think, the most, to me, but there's other examples, but if you remember Garrison Matthews, and I still remember, he's playing with the G League, but we barely knew who he was. And all of a sudden he gets called up in a December game a few years ago against the Miami Heat, and I could still picture Eric Spoelstra's head, exploding, like, who is this guy? I'm sure he knew who he was, but he was not in their scouting report, and he just had an amazing night. And now Garrison Matthews has an NBA career. Jordan Goodwin has an NBA career, albeit with other teams. So that's why I say it's a real thing. You're not going to get 5 players out of a G League team, but if you can get 1 or 2 that develop into NBA players, that's significant. And certainly I think we're seeing that with how they will continue to use this, and also when this draft coming up, it'll be interesting to see what their selections are, how many draft picks they do have, because there's going to be a lot of activity, I would assume, this offseason. I'm not stating that with any fact base, but I just know that this team wants to have assets and cap flexibility moving forward. But the good thing is now there is the outlet of the G League, where oftentimes you'd have a second-round pick and you would never see them. Whereas now, not only do you see them, but they get some playing time. Obviously, our second-round pick, it's a different story as a European player, Tristan Vukcevic, who's now getting time with the Wizards. But, let's say next year it's a second-round pick that will get a chance to develop. Or look, Johnny Davis, we still don't know what his potential or upside is, but if there's not a Capital City Go-Go, he certainly gets lost, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's something where this is, again, long-term, not just about the way Winger has done it, where you had a certain caliber of player. Johnny Davis is like the perfect caliber. That guy's out of the league in the former NBA.
Correct.
And Johnny Davis is still an enigma wrapped inside a mystery, wrapped inside whatever else. I think moving forward of exactly what he is, he seems like he's a legit NBA defender who offensively they got to figure out how do you make him useful? How do you make him productive on that side of the floor? But the defense it might just be worth it as you figure out that process. And he can figure out some of that in the G League, where in the past it's just like, hey, dude, we can't play you on offense, which means you can't play you. And if we're not going to play you, we need the roster spot. So see ya. And that guy's out of the league. No,
you're exactly right, and that's what I'm saying now. And it's so important now that we're getting players into the league. The days of 4-year college players, are pretty much gone. I mean, you're going to have that, but they're coming into the league, often with one or if that college experience, and you do need that. It is a huge jump to this league, as we've talked about over and over again. Everyone that is in this league and finds a way into this league, must be saluted, because it is again, there's billions on the planet. There's only 450 NBA jobs, so you can do the math on that.
Dave, I was told there would be no math.
All right. That's right.
I don't know what you just asked me to do. Why did you do that to me? Why? No, Dave. I'm short circuiting now. I was told there would be no math. Dave Johnson's with us from the broadcast booth at Capital One Arena. As you hear DJ Heat in the background, getting the crowd hyped up and ready to go. By the way, how sweet is her banner? She got her own setup there now.
Oh, yeah, no, she's I've said one of the best, and I mentioned at the time. Last year we were doing a tree planting, and it took several hours.
Yeah.
And I turned to her and I said, you're flawless, and her attention to detail, whether it's an exciting NBA basketball game or tree planting, which is a different vibe. It's a community event, to say the least. And she nails it. She has a feel.
She does.
That's why she's the best.
She is, and getting recognized for it.
Yes.
She was at All-Star. She's gone over to Africa for NBA Africa stuff. So realize, if you go to a Wizards game, that soundtrack you're hearing, it's not just any soundtrack.
No.
Unfortunately, right now, you're not just getting any basketball, Dave.
No.
You are getting some shorted, as a fan, Wizards basketball. Unfortunately, the way the injuries have stacked up here at the end of the year, it wouldn't surprise me. This is just me spitballing, but if Tyus Jones has played his last game for the season with the back injury that he's battling, Kyle Kuzma, has been nicked up, and at some point with a week and a half left in the season here, do you wonder if they're just going to kind of shut him down for the rest of it quietly here? So with that, opportunity also arises for these young players. Is there anybody in particular that you are interested in seeing in a larger role over the last, week and a half, 2 weeks here?
Well, Tristan Vukcevic, again, that was the whole point of bringing him over, and I think we've seen some positive, snippets. Again, when you make your first two NBA shots or made three-pointers on the road against Chicago, that shows the moment probably isn't too big for you. And so I think this is going to be a valuable time for him going into the summer. And again, I think you're going to see more and more minutes from him, because that was the whole point. And you want him to feel good about his offseason going into the offseason, and that's why he came over from Partizan. So I think I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm looking forward to Jared Butler, finishing strong. He's really doing Tyus Jones type numbers. I mean, he's kind of the Jordan Goodwin, if you will, not to that degree. Goodwin had a bigger sample size, but he's really coming to the fore. And then, look, Jordan Poole is someone that, and fans are still on about his. And I understand it was a bad first half of the season, but if you look at what he's done since the All-Star break, and it's been with more consistency, there's more flow, there's more rhythm, and now you're feeling like I see this is the Jordan Poole that we witnessed in Golden State. So, those are three players that come to mind that I really want to see finish strong.
Yeah, no doubt. Poole has really turned it around as of late. Credit to him for sticking with it. It has been a long, strange, rough year, but Jordan has really stuck with it in a way that's admirable, and I think makes a lot of people feel a lot better going into the offseason, and then obviously we'll see what he can do next year. Dave, anything special to look out for tonight on the pregame, the halftime? What do you guys got coming up?
Well, we've got some great Jonathan Morris trivia coming up, so we'll have some great Bucks We love to play trivia. That'll be coming up at halftime. I could say that we have the secret to beating the Milwaukee Bucks, but I'm not sure if we're going to have that in our pregame because that's a tall order. They're pretty good. It'll be interesting to see who they play tonight because this is the first of a back-to-back for them as well. I mean, we have a back-to-back with the Lakers tomorrow. Yep. They play Memphis. So it'll be interesting to see what their mindset is. But, again, the rumor about this Giannis guy is confirmed. But you know what? This is why we play him. I still think one of the best games, it was a loss, but it was back in November. It was a 3-point loss to the Bucks in Milwaukee. And it's funny to hear the Bucks people talk about they don't know who they are. And this is a team that's supposed to be contending for the title. And this is a team that also obviously fired their coach as Doc Rivers. So, they're in a different, obviously, situation than the Wizards are in. But they have 47 wins, but they don't know who they are. I mean, that's got some problems with it as well. Because of the window of opportunity, you want to get, and that's why they made the change of Doc Rivers. When you get to that 47, 50-plus wins, now you're an elite NBA basketball team, and you need to act like one.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And there's a lot seemingly had going on behind the scenes with Adrian Griffin earlier in the year. One thing here's I don't think this is a key to beating the Bucks tonight, but especially if Dame and Giannis are playing. Number to count. You just have your whoever's doing stats for you guys tonight. Just count up the number of pick and rolls they ran. Okay. I want to say it was the game against the Lakers. Maybe it was against the Thunder. One of their games recently, Giannis was a ball screener 45 times. That is the most in his career. So they are really just spamming that pick and roll with Dame and Giannis as an ability to try to find that rhythm for the postseason. So there's your Hoffman thing to watch tonight, Dave.
Although that might be a benefit to the Wizards because, oddly enough, he just missed the game last night with a groin strain, or last game against Atlanta. So there will be no Damian Lillard tonight.
Okay,
but
go.
to your point, they are 1-5 without Damian Lillard, and they just got that first win against Atlanta. So, they're a better team with Damian Lillard and Giannis on the floor at the same time. And to that stat that you pointed out, that is an important stat that my statistician won't have to worry about tonight, but going forward. That's to keep an eye on.
For sure. All right, Dave, thank you very much for your time as always, and we will talk to you tomorrow on the old Sega Bob, the second game of back-to-back. Looking forward to Sega Bob Dave tomorrow. Right. Thank you, sir. That is Good Dave stuff. Johnson with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we wrap things up with real people said, real things real people said into real microphones. Really. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up here as we give way to Wizards basketball. Do the same thing tomorrow night. Back-to-back Bucks-Lakers for the Wiz as they limp, literally, towards the end of the season. Anthony, housekeeping-wise, what do we got tomorrow on the show? It's a Wednesday. We will have heard from some of the Commanders' veterans as they are going to speak. Obviously, there are no rookies yet, but they're going through phase one today as the first workout. I think there's a second one tomorrow morning, and then Terry, John, and a couple of others. Schedules are subject to change, but those were just some of the names listed to speak tomorrow to the press. So we'll have some audio from Ashburn tomorrow, which will be nice. Linnell is going to join us. What else we got? Oh, Tom Sherwood tomorrow.
Yep.
Tom Sherwood has been the guy covering all of the DC Monumental stuff, and there was a pretty significant meeting today. In fact, I'm expecting a story to come out any minute now, probably from the folks who covered this thing, about DC meeting with the city, or like the deputy mayor meeting with the city council and kind of laying the foundation for everything that the Monumental wants to do, and is this thing actually going to get approved? Because there's an agreement between the mayor's office and Monumental, and we're pretty sure it's going to go through, but there are some details to be worked out in terms of the financing and all of that kind of stuff, and just how ugly could it get. Tom Sherwood has been the guy on all of this, so he is going to join us for all of the details tomorrow. So pretty pumped about that. Then Linnell will be in, and then anything else? Dave at 6:15 again. Anything else on the docket, Ant?
No, that's everything.
All right, and we'll see what news breaks between now and then. We have a bunch of really good stuff for Real Things, so let's not waste any more time, shall we? It's time for Real Things, Real People Said, into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Alrighty then. Do you want to be a Peloton instructor? No, seriously, how hard could it be, right? We've all died on that bike or that tread or the whatever. It can't be that hard. Well, Jess Sims is a Peloton instructor. She's also the in-game host for the Brooklyn Nets, and so she brought her friend to work for the day from her other work. Mikal Bridges, trying out to be a Peloton instructor. Harder than you'd think. Oh boy.
Everyday job. I'm a freestyle. Watch this. What's the first line? Is it the welcome Peloton?
What's up, Peloton? My
What's up,
name
Peloton?
is.
Okay.
To not know that, we're off to a terrible start. What's up, Peloton? Come on.
I didn't know that.
If you walk into that studio and you're doing the audition, you have to know that.
Okay.
It's every instructor, every class. What's up, Peloton? It's instructor name. Today we've got a minutes class, and we're gonna blah, 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 blah. Pedal, run, row. They have a bunch of stuff now. All right, Mikal, back to you.
This is it. Don't mess it up.
What's up, Peloton fam? Mikal Bridges here. I'm gonna take you through this 20-minute run. You know, power. That's I was about to say such a freaking good line.
Take 2.
Yikes.
Make sure everybody locked in, because today's the day. You know, you got to make sure you're locked in and have that fire. You know, you might want to quit, but we don't have time for that. You know, so let's get this started. Elevation or
You know, you should not quit basketball. Here you go. Give me my job back. This is bad.
It's awful. You know, you want your instructor to motivate you. I'm motivated to leave this workout based off Mikal Bridges. Does it get better?
Bad. No, and then he goes.
Yeah, so let's get it started. Make sure everybody stop laughing.
Oh, this is everything I've ever needed in my whole life. This is the best day of my life. Just so you know, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. You said tonight.
Yeah, no, I did say tonight. I kind of, yeah, okay.
Come on,
Run it
Mikal.
back.
Hope you ate a good breakfast. I know it's the morning time.
Encourage
and
fueling.
This is a great way to start your morning. You know, pedal to the metal. I know if you feel like you want to quit, don't. There's no such thing as a quitting, okay? If you get a little tired, maybe you can bring the incline down, bring the speed down, but we don't quit here. We're Peloton. Whoosh!
That was better.
Come on.
All right. We almost
tired. This is how we control the music.
Then he's like, is this how you control the music?
I'm feeling inspired, Craig. I think I want to join Peloton.
What's up, Peloton? I don't know. I feel like if I were to try to do it, it's cheating. Like, I know how to do that.
All right, give us 15 seconds.
What do you want to run? You want to bike? What kind of workout are we doing?
I want to run.
Okay, we doing like an interval run? We doing like a long run?
I don't know. Just give me something.
All right. All right, I got something. All right, here we go. What's up, Peloton? Craig here for your 20-minute pop run. As you know, if it's a music run as opposed to a workout, like an endurance, whatever run, our goal today is to have fun. We're going to enjoy this. It should feel good. 20 minutes, we're in, we're out, and you should feel better by the end of this than when you walked in today.
Okay.
Yeah, see, I actually do this.
All right, here we go.
All right, what's up, Peloton? Oh, he's standing up. Oh, hold on. I'm going to give you the ISO cam. Hold on. All right. Off you go. Actually, I can't give you the ISO cam because it's too tall.
Oh, it's too tall?
No. You're good. Plus, I want my reaction to this.
What's up, Peloton? It's your boy, Anthony, and we're about to get a great 20-minute run in, baby. We're talking about we're going to go slow. We're going to go fast. We're going to change up the tempo. You know, whatever you put in is everything you're going to get out. So let's go 20 minutes in, out. Let's get it.
I'll give you this.
I don't know these terms.
It was a lot better than Mikal Bridges.
Okay, I'll take that.
I will give you that. It was a lot better than Mikal Bridges.
All right, I'll take it.
All right. Anyway.
Woosah.
Back to real things. Not that was real things that you and I just said into these microphones. Gino Auriemma last night, after he earned a trip to his 10 millionth Final Four, was asked about his next opponent, Iowa and Caitlin Clark. You might remember a couple of weeks ago, Gino said Paige Beckers, his star guard, is the best player in the country. He has some different thoughts compared to what he saw with Caitlin Clark and considering who's next on the schedule.
I hope Caitlin Clark had a personal agenda against LSU. And I know there's nothing personal between me and her, so I don't need to be seeing her drop 50 on us next weekend, you know? So I love her. I think she's the best player. Forget I ever said Paige is the best player in the country. I think she's the best player of all time. I don't know whoever said that I said that Paige is the best player in the country.
Now, Anthony, I actually didn't get a chance to watch the full video on this. I just saw the quotes. Was Paige sitting next to Gino when he said that? Because that would have been extra hilarious.
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I saw the video, but I didn't see Paige.
Okay, yeah. The video I saw was just focused in on Gino, but often those press conferences are player and coach right next to each other. What's hilarious is there is some personal history between Gino Auriemma and Caitlin Clark. Did you read the full Wright Thompson piece?
I did not, but I know he...
It was a long profile.
Yeah.
It is well worth your time. If you have not read, anything Wright Thompson takes the time to write, we should all read because he's better at writing profiles than I am at saying my own name. He's just remarkable as a writer. But he spent a ton of time with Caitlin over the course of the season. Lisa Bluter, Jan Jansen, one of their assistants, Caitlin's family. Like, he was invited to, like, her birthday dinner after a game. Like, he got the kind of access that you dream of when you're doing this kind of exclusive, embedded profile type piece. And one of the stories that comes out in this, and this was known on some level, it just Wright takes it to another depth in the ESPN.com feature, is Caitlin dreamed, like most young women's basketball players who have grown up in the last 20 years, of going to UConn. UConn was the program. Maya Moore was her favorite player. We had the amazing moment earlier this year when Caitlin finally got to meet Maya for the first time, and she instantly turned into that 10-year-old little girl that was freaking out in the same way that so many little girls freak out when they meet Caitlin. And Gino actually had a commitment. Actually, no, sorry. She committed to Notre Dame instead of Iowa initially, and then ultimately decided, like, nah, Iowa's where I want to be. But she was kind of waiting the entire time on Gino to come visit. And there was letters and there, like, the kind of, perfunctory stuff that happens, but she did not get the kind of interest that says like, hey, we really want you. And Iowa was super early, really interested. Obviously, Caitlin's an Iowa kid. Like she's from, I think Iowa City. No, from Des Moines, Iowa City. Where's she from? She's from the state of Iowa.
I know she's from Iowa.
Yeah. Notre Dame. She grew up like in a Catholic family who loved Notre Dame. So like that was really hard, especially for her to tell her mom that she was gonna ultimately turn down Notre Dame. But there is, and like Caitlin Clark is a competitive psycho. She, I'm sure, will be reminded this week by whether it's her brothers, whether it's by her teammates, whether it's by folks on that staff. He never came to saw you.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's going to have a courtside seat. Give him the show. And it's a fine balance if you're the coaches to be like, give him the show versus we got to play our game. But I think if you're Iowa, the show is your game. It's going to be a lot of fun on Friday. We'll preview it then. And we'll see you tomorrow. Wizards basketball is next.